Hi, Ronan. I suppose, first of all, how's the body and how's everything after Saturday? And is it into game mode now straight away? Strength page and get going for Saturday?
Yeah, body's all right. Obviously, it was pretty physical out there, but yeah, for the most part, I'm okay. And yeah, we kind of turned the page this morning, did a review of the game and just took our learnings. And then now, yeah, we're all just looking forward to this weekend coming.
Obviously, it looks like Dan Sheehan's picked up a bad injury at the weekend. As somebody plays in his position, international and provincial teammate of his, and I'm sure he would have known for going back into the 20 years as well. Like it's a tough blow for someone like that.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll be a big loss. But this competition in the squad, and I suppose we're just going to have to make sure we do our job and make sure that we put our best foot forward and make sure we lead the team in a good place.
Is it a bittersweet thing in professional rugby where, someone's misfortune presents an opportunity for you potentially?
No, I suppose just bitter really. You never want to see a teammate injured or hurt or anything like that. So yeah, I wouldn't say bittersweet at all. It's more just kind of unfortunate. That's sport. But yeah, we're going to have to deal with it as a group and move on quickly.
In terms of the review from Saturday, what did that show up around the set piece in particular?
I suppose as a whole, we're just going to have to look to improve on that. Obviously, at times in the game went well. Maybe at times dropped off a touch. So it's just about sort of nitpicking through those little details we might have gotten wrong, or yeah, we weren't accurate with, and then just I suppose try to right them wrongs for this weekend coming.
And just finally, then, how confident are you can turn things around? And I know a series can't be won this weekend, but at least cap yourself on a high.
Yeah, we're very confident. As I said, it was more just little fine details that we're, I suppose, going to have to try and fix to try and, I suppose, change the outcome of some of them moments from the previous game. So yeah, we're very confident going into this weekend that we can fix them.
So just asking about that rope, how difficult is it to not play the ball at your foot, like a neck rope and so much going on? How hard is it to go back for something like that when it's an absolute mess of breakdown?
Yeah, it's obviously it's tough in the heat of the moment, really. Yeah, I kind of went in, was trying to hook the ball backwards, and obviously it's just them fine margins in test matches that decide things. And unfortunately, we came out the wrong side of it. I was on the ground when I tried to hook it, but we're not dwelling on that. We're just looking to control what we can control, I suppose, and we have to leave all that stuff aside, and we have to just get better ourselves I suppose throughout the whole game, really.
Rassi, what's your response to sort of certain pundits when you bring on the bomb squad at the same time, calling it dangerous?
We do hear things and we do see things, and I'm on social media. I read things, and and there's some things that you really take to heart, and some things that you try and understand. I try to stay in touch with South Africa and what our people feel and how our people react, and try to be honest to the media without giving too much away. And to be honest with you, I've learned that if you know the laws and you know the protocols and you don't go outside the protocols, where I've been slapped over my wrist for not doing that, and then learning and adapting, I really don't see how that would. For our reality is, listen, man, we could have sent it on one by one, but if all six go at the same time, I don't know if that's dangerous. I mean, Ireland definitely also play with 6-2, so I don't think the Irish team feel that way. I don't think Andy Farrell feel that way. I think that's one individual who said that, but I'm not even sure the Irish players would agree with that. They're too proud and they handle us well, and they still after that scored two great tries to make it a really tense game at the end. So, and the one injury was in the first half on Sweden before the bomb squad was on. So some things make sense when you see it, and others don't.
Rassi, do you know Matt Williams personally? Matt Williams, the guy who's...
No, I know I know he's coached, where he coached, and his coaching record and things and like that, but I don't know him as a person. So no.
You might have
No, I don't know. No.
Israel is pressing ahead with a major military offensive in Gaza City as Hamas warns the attacks could send ceasefire efforts back to square one. Israeli forces report close quarters combat with Hamas fighters, saying they are destroying terrorist infrastructure. Hundreds of thousands of people, meantime, are fleeing their homes once again under yet new evacuation orders. Gaza Civil Defense says bodies are trapped under buildings and lying in the streets, but it's just too dangerous for crews to try and retrieve them. The Palestinian Red Crescent says all of its medical clinics in Gaza City are now out of service. You want to go to our Jeremy Diamond now for more, who's live for us in Jerusalem. You know, what a nightmare repeating itself here again. I mean, evacuations ordered, and again, it's a familiar horror, right? Where the heck do these people go? What more are you learning about exactly the Israeli operation that is underway and what it means for civilians?
Well, you're right, Paula. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are once again on the move. We have seen over the course of just the last week evacuation orders for parts of Khan Yunis, and then in northern Gaza, several evacuation orders in different neighborhoods of Gaza City. And that is where the Israeli military has been concentrating its military operations over the last 48 hours or so inside Gaza City, neighborhoods where the Israeli military says that Hamas has returned to areas that the Israeli military had previously cleared. And that is what we are continuing to see in Gaza, absent a long-term strategy for the governance, an alternative to Hamas's governance in Gaza, the Israeli military going back into areas that it had previously withdrawn from. And not only is that resulting in increased fighting, increased artillery shelling, airstrikes, but also, of course, the impact to civilians, not only those who are killed and wounded in the fighting, rescue workers having trouble actually reaching the dead and the wounded as a result of the heavy fighting. And then, of course, as we were talking about, the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, in some cases, of people who are moving to areas of central Gaza, to that Al-Mawasi coastal area, where they are simply finding that there are not enough resources for the number of people who are currently displaced in Gaza. Even things like tents are running in short supply in Gaza at the moment. And for now, the only salve that they could potentially get is if indeed there is a ceasefire agreement. We are seeing those negotiations continuing this week in Cairo as well as in Doha, Qatar. But for now, no deal as of yet. Paula.
You know, the other aspect here that you've been following closely has been whether or not this will also be a conflict on another front, Israel's northern border. What did you learn by visiting?
Well, late last week, we traveled to Shtula, which is just a few hundred feet away from the Lebanese border, to get a sense of just how tense things are there and to see some of the destruction wrought by Hezbollah's anti-tank missiles.
They're going to see us right when we get up there, and we have 3 minutes.
Colonel Jordan Hertzberg is talking about Hezbollah.
After 3 minutes, they can start the fire, so we're going to do it very quick.
He's taking us to an Israeli community on the front lines of Israel's simmering conflict with the Lebanese militant group. Up a winding mountain road, past a roadblock and a security fence, and into the village of Shtula, which sits right on the Lebanese border.
We've just entered the village of Shtula. This is a community of about 300 people normally, but right now it's just an absolute ghost town.
Let's go quick.
The 3-minute countdown starts as soon as we are within line of sight of southern Lebanon.
Look how close we are to the border here.
Where Hezbollah militants armed with anti-tank missiles are closely watching the border, prepared to fire once again.
This house was hit by an anti-tank missile right here. Past the window.
2 homes, one next to the other, hit in the same attack, according to the Israeli military.
This is one of the most dangerous places in northern Israel right now. We're in Shtula, and you can see the Lebanese border just right across there, across from those concrete barriers. We're just a few hundred feet. And what that means is that we are within range of those anti-tank guided missiles. And that is exactly what has wrought this destruction on this civilian home.
The threat of anti-tank missiles is part of why Israel wants to push Hezbollah back to the Litani River, about 18 miles north of the border, outside the range of those missiles.
Okay, we have 35 seconds.
We've been here for 3 minutes. The colonel has been watching his watch the entire time that we've been here, and now he's telling us it's time to go.
Hezbollah has been firing rockets, missiles, and drones at northern Israel since October 8th. Israel has responded with airstrike after airstrike, devastating parts of southern Lebanon, where more than 90,000 people have fled their homes since October. In northern Israel, about 60,000 Israelis have been displaced. People like Ori Eliyahu and his 9 dogs.
Tut is the leader.
His grandfather was among the first people Israel settled in Shtula in the late 1960s. And after spending his summers there as a child, Ori decided to move there.
Shtula is a special place for you.
It's my heart, to be honest.
If you could return to Shtula, you would.
Of course, I will return in the first moment I will be able to, yeah.
But he says that may not be the case for families with children.
I don't think that there is a condition that will make them come back, because whenever they know that Hezbollah is like Hamas can do what they did in October 7 and attack them, they want to be returned. And there is no real solution, because a big war might ruin everything.
A big war is exactly what the Israeli military is preparing for.
Our division has been training for this war for a long, long time.
Whether that war materializes is unclear, but for Colonel Hertzberg, the objective is obvious: get Israel's northern residents back into their homes.
Whether it happens before a major ground operation or after ground operation, I can't tell you. I'm on the tactical level, I'm not at the political level or the policy level, but the people are going to come back sooner than later.
And Paula, the situation along that border still remains very, very tense, and it's not clear yet whether it will blow up into that all-out war that has been feared. What we do know, though, is those ceasefire negotiations happening this week in Doha, Qatar, they could not only unlock a ceasefire in Gaza, but they could also potentially unlock a broader peace in the region.
Yeah, and as you pointed out in your report, tens of thousands of people on both sides of that border want to get back to their lives. It's obviously an agricultural hub as well, and we'll wait to see if there is progress on these ceasefire talks. Jeremy Diamond for us. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone.
Applicants to be interviewed by the Judicial Services Commission going forward will object and apply for the recusal of Dr. Hlophe on the basis the finding of gross misconduct renders him unfit to serve on a body that is determined to fitness, that is to determine the fitness and the propriety of others.
Dr. Hlophe is also the first judge to have been removed from office, and that cannot be ignored.
The former judge president, Dr. Hlophe, was officially elected to present the National Assembly on the Judicial Service Commission on Tuesday. He was nominated during a sitting of the House in Cape Town. The House passed a motion after his party, Umkhonto weSizwe Party, nominated him to be part of the body. Parties including the ANC, Economic Freedom Fighters, Al-Jama, ATM, PAC supported Hlophe's nomination. The ANC said that the Constitution and the rules of the National Assembly didn't say what qualifications an MP needed to sit on the JSC, so they supported the motion. Dumiseni Ntuli, the newly elected chief whip of the ANC, stated that the long-standing tradition of political parties being able to appoint their own representatives to the JSC must be honored until there are modifications made to the rules and constitution. This is after the ANC withdrew its motion last week, saying the matter needed thorough discussion. The Umkhonto weSizwe Party's parliamentary leader, Hlophe, will join the likes of the EFF leader, Julius Malema, Action SA, National Assembly leader, Athol Trollip, and the ANC's Molabi Liganyane, and Fasiya Hassan and the Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament, Glenis Brettenberg, in overseeing judicial conduct. Meanwhile, the DA, Freedom Front Plus, and ACDP objected to the nomination, saying it was illogical and not recommended for a judge who has been impeached to serve on the JSC. According to the DA, the EFF and MK party's wish is to tear down the independent judiciary, which the DA works to protect. The DA said that this is clear conflict of interest and an attempt to undermine the independence of the judiciary of South Africa. Persons elected to represent the National Assembly on JSC must hold such values which cannot be said for Hlophe. The DA said this was a risk to JSC processes for the election of judges and their investigations into the judges' conduct, endangering the rule of law in South Africa and a proper functioning of judiciary. Hlophe will now be responsible for appointing judges to the judiciary.
We, as the economic freedom fighters, fully support the appointment of Dr. Mandlakaise John Hlophe as a representative of South Africa's 7th Parliament in the Judicial Services Commission. As a matter of principle is that anyone who is eligible to become a member of Parliament as per Section 47 of the Constitution can be delegated to whatever responsibility that all members of Parliament are eligible for. And that is the principle that we had sustained. There are so many less than capable members of the Democratic Alliance, some of which are serving in the executive now, who do not have any form of qualification or direction. We have not yet exposed their incapacity because they're eligible to be appointed even as executives. Some of them are even deputized by people who are more qualified than them. It's just a group of white illiterates, semi-illiterates that are presiding over government because a certain section of society has given you that responsibility. We respect that. So let's respect the fact that a certain number of people in South Africa have voted for Mkhonto as a party and have designated Dr. Hlophe to become a member of Parliament. So let's respect that. It's a matter of protocol, which we have always protected in the Chief Whips Forum, that whoever is designated by a political party must be respected. So we wish you well, Dr. Hlophe, in the Judicial Services Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What's your take on this one, people? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more news.
Another South African soldier has been killed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The South African National Defence Force member was part of the UN mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The SADF says the soldier died when a hand grenade exploded near sleeping quarters at their base in Beni yesterday.
It is not clear what caused the hand grenade to explode. However, the SANDF Board of Inquiry, including the United Nations officials, will be convened to investigate the circumstances surrounding the incident. The name of the deceased will be announced when all processes and procedures to bring his mortal remains back home have been concluded and his family has been informed of his passing. The Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Ms. Angie Mutsecha, Deputy Minister Olomisa and Deputy Minister Mukungo, together with the Acting Secretary for Defense, Dr. Tobegile Gamete, as well as the Chief of the South African National Defence Force, General Rudzani Mapwanya, convey their sincerest condolences to the family of the deceased and the entire Defence Force family.
Well, the United Nations has also reacted to the incident.
We've gotten a report from our colleagues at in the peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo that tells us that a South African peacekeeper deployed in North Kivu died after a grenade exploded next to his tent. The mission is currently investigating the cause of that explosion. We, of course, convey our very deep and heartfelt condolences to the family of the peacekeeper and to the people and government of South Africa.
As Morning Live focuses on newly appointed ministers this week, today we speak to the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Now, Dr. Motsoaledi is not new to this position following his previous 2 terms as Minister of Health. Minister Motsoaledi joins us virtually to reflect on the Department of Health in South Africa, its challenges, his hindsight perspective, and of course, his vision as he comes back into this ministry. Dr. Motsoaledi, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Good morning to the viewers and listeners. And thank you very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, Minister, you recently said you were stunned when you were brought back to this position. And I couldn't understand that because when the president signed the NHI bill, one of the first things I thought was that he would probably bring you back to this portfolio, given your previous tenure. So you didn't anticipate coming back? Why not?
Not at all, Sakina. I'm surprised. What made you think like that? How could you be so predictive? I mean, what was telling you to predict something like that and it actually happened? I never ever thought about it, I must confess.
It's the work you did in that particular department and in NHI in the initial stages, because I remember you calling us to orientate us, to tell us about NHI, how it's going to work, how the funding model is going to work and all of those things. So in my mind, it made perfect sense. But here you are, Minister. So as you look at this ministry, first port of business, what are your thoughts in terms of what you'll have to do?
It's a lot of work, Sakina, a lot of work. Because remember, when we bring in NHI, we are bringing a transition, a very, very big transition in the country. And if I may quote the Lancet, I'm sure you're aware, one of the 4 well-known medical journals is the Lancet, which is a British medical journal. In September 2013, in its editorial, it says since human beings started populating this planet, there've only been 2 transitions in healthcare, and the third one is about to happen. And it names the first transition as the time when the world brought in clean running water and sewerage, and they call that a demographic transition in the world. Because small as it might look, it changed populations around the world, it increased life expectancy. People who used to die very young because of infections started living longer, and that's how life expectancy changed around the world. The second transition, it calls demographic, it's about immunization, to say. The second transition is about immunization. It's called epidemiological transition, when vaccinations was brought in the world. You may remember, Sakina, there was a disease called smallpox that annihilated millions of people together with other infections. But after Edward Jenner brought in immunization for smallpox, other diseases were immunized for, and the world underwent this epidemiological transition. Now they are saying the third transition is true. It is how healthcare is financed by countries around the world. And that financing of healthcare in South Africa, we call it NHI. So it's a huge transition, which is recognized the best in the world.
So, Minister, with all of that, we came from that COVID-19 pandemic, and as you say, there's so much going on. We now have mpox that we are dealing with, and I saw yesterday a report, successfully so. But there is a lot going on, and there's also so much contestation that came with the passing of the NHI legislation. And I think for a lot of South Africans, this is a big one. How do you foresee cooperating with colleagues in the executive, given that some political parties are opposed to the NHI and they are now part of this government of national unity? Some have even threatened to bring legal action against government if they continue to implement NHI.
Well, Sakina, therefore, there are already 2 legal actions, by the way. So on my first day in the department, I spent 3 hours with 3 senior counsels listening to this issue, because there are already challenges. By the way, the first challenge has been won by a government. I'm sure you are aware that there's been a challenge by Solidarity when the department started setting up structures and appointing people to take the issue of NHI forward, because it was not there before. There was no DDG or Deputy Director General in charge of NHI before. When he was put in and his staff came to the board, Solidarity rushed to court, but they lost that one. So the first round has already been to government. Now we are going to go for second round, and there will be many more. We are expecting more from the way they've told me. But we'll sit down and defend it because, Sakina, let me say, from where I'm sitting, I think many people oppose NHI without knowing what it is. I thought us as the state perhaps did not sit down and explain very, very well. And part of my work is to go and explain to people exactly what NHI is, because I have heard some of the criticism that this is not the NHI that we are introducing in the country. This person is talking about something else. You know, for instance, many call it universal health care, whereas the World Organization has already named it long ago as universal health coverage, because the central issue here, Sakina, in NHI, is not a healthcare system as people believe. That no, it's an expensive healthcare system. We need to prepare. We need to have infrastructure and technology and human beings first. So they believe it's some sophisticated type of healthcare. It is actually healthcare financing, meaning it deals with one of the 6 pillars of a healthcare system as pronounced by the World Health Organization. And what are the pillars? The World Organization clearly defined that for any country to run their healthcare system very well, it needs to have 6 pillars. And the first pillar is leadership and governance. What is the leadership of that healthcare system and how is it governed? The second one is essential medicines and other commodities that are needed in healthcare. The third one, and I'm not really naming them in any order of importance, I'm just naming them as they come to my head. The third one is human resources for health. It's called the health workforce. What does the workforce consist of, and what does it do, and where do you place this health workforce, like you place an army during a war? The fourth one is healthcare financing. How is the healthcare of that country financed? How do people get cured when they are sick without them having to suffer what is called a financial catastrophe? The fifth one is health information system, IT systems, so that when a patient moves from one area to the other, doctors or health workers know what the patient is all about. Because presently, without an interlinked system, a person can go to 10 different doctors in both public and private, and they'll always start from the beginning, and that's not good for health. The last one, the 10th one, is health service delivery systems. What are the packages of healthcare that population know that they are due to them? For instance, when a woman is pregnant, whether she's rich or poor, what can she expect? How is the country to take care of her about the pregnancy until she delivers? And when she delivers, what are the packages due to the new arrival, to that baby? That is healthcare delivery system. So there are 10. As you can see, one of them is healthcare financing. Now, that to me is the center of all the pillars of healthcare, because without financing, there is not much you can do. That is why all over the world, Sakina, ministers of finance are regarded as perhaps the second in charge to the president or the head of state in that country, because without them, everything goes flat. Now, can I explain this healthcare finance in South Africa? Why it needs to change? Why it has to be called a transition? At the moment, Sagina, this is how healthcare is financed in South Africa. According to the World Health Organization, again, a country ought to spend 5% of its GDP, gross domestic product, on health. Then the health of the population will be better if you do that. And now you must listen to me carefully. It doesn't say the budget. It doesn't say the state must increase the budget of health or so. It says the GDP, the total wealth of the country, 5% of it must be used to the health of the population. Now, in South Africa, we are already at 8.5% of the GDP on health. We have far exceeded the recommendation of the World Organization. Generally, countries in Europe are at 9%, we are at 8.5%. What it means is that we and countries in Europe are in the same WhatsApp group when it comes to the amount of money or wealth poured into health. Now the question is, where lies the problem? Because our healthcare systems are like chalk and cheese. You know, where is the problem? Yes, and here is the problem, Sakina. In South Africa, which doesn't happen in any other country, in South Africa, that issue of gross inequality comes in. You are aware that we are regarded as the most unequal country in the world. If you want to see what inequality means, come to the healthcare system. There's no other aspect of life that reflects this gross inequality between the rich and the poor than in the healthcare system. It's no longer about color as it was in apartheid. It's about the depth of your pocket. Now, in South Africa, this 8.5% of the GDP, which is huge, is divided as follows. 51% of that goes to only 14% of the population, and 49% goes to a whooping 86% of the population. But in this 86% of the population, lots and lots of responsibilities are put on the shoulders of that system. And in this 14%, it's light work. They are doing very light work. And if you want me, I can even quote figures for you if you so desire, if you have got time.
Yes, I want those figures, because this is one of the biggest issues raised around the issue of financing the fund. So let's talk about it, Minister. Let's break it down and let's try to understand what goes where.
Yeah. Sakina, I've already said we are spending 8.5% of the GDP on health, which amounts to R500 billion. About 580 billion is spent on healthcare in South Africa. But 51% of it goes to only 14% of the population, and the remaining 49% goes to 86% of the population. Now, here is the burden, which I said I'll explain, and thank you for giving me time about figures. Let's start with birth, the beginning of a human being. Every year, 1.2 million women fall pregnant in South Africa, which means 1.2 new arrivals every year in South Africa in terms of birth. But this 1.2 million people, the private sector, that is carrying this 14%, because it's in the private sector, let me say, which is carrying this 14% of the population and carrying 51% of the GDP of the country. It is only 140,000 pregnant women per annum. It takes care of only 140,000 babies per annum. It brings 140,000 babies on earth. This meager public sector, which is carrying 86% of the population, but spending only 49% of the GDP, is bringing in 1,060,000 babies into this world, is taking care of 1,060,000 pregnant women in the world. That's number one. Then we go to HIV/AIDS, which you know is the biggest killer. Was actually annihilating people. It is still the biggest killer, even though we've tamed it. If you remember, we have to put up the biggest antiretroviral program in the whole world. Now, there are about 5 million people, 5.7 million actually, people who are on ARVs. We still needing to move to somewhere around 7 million if we are to achieve the 95 defined by the international aid conferences. Now, these 5.7 million people who are being treated for HIV/AIDS, the biggest killer in the country, only 350,000 are being treated in the private sector. The rest are treated in the public sector with this meager amount of money. Now we go to TB. People who are on HIV/AIDS, 80% of them are killed by TB. So it also goes into the bracket of the biggest killer. I don't know of any private hospital that is prepared to treat TB. All of the people who are suffering TB are treated by the public sector because it is not profitable to treat a disease like TB. Yet it affects human beings and it's not profitable to the economy not to treat it. But it's not treated there. It is treated only by the private sector. By the public sector, because the drugs there are extremely, extremely expensive. Now, during Ebola, Sakina, if you remember, there was Ebola in Sierra Leone, in Libya, and Guinea. Something extraordinary happened, which you, members of the public, don't know about. There are many mine owners of South Africa in those countries. There are many people who are running mines, their own mines in those countries. Whenever they got a fever, they will immediately get a chartered flight because they've got their own flights, they've got their own planes. They immediately join into a chartered flight and rush to South Africa. Obviously, because healthcare systems in those countries are sort of at a very low level, I must say, and they get scared that they're going to die. They come to South Africa because they are millionaires or billionaires. They obviously rush to the private sector where they believe everything is kosher, everything is good. And how do I know about that? Because they started appearing in large numbers in public hospitals. We started seeing millionaires and well-to-do people there. And we got shocked and we were curious to ask why. And they said, whenever you run a fever and you say, I'm from West Africa, they say, no, please, not through the gate of this hospital. Go elsewhere. Go into the public. Because why? They don't want to take a risk. And why? I'm not hating private healthcare, but I'm just stating facts. Because most of them are on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And a stock exchange is not a place to run health for the poor or for everybody else, Sakina, for me and you. It's a place where you deal with huge amounts of money, where you want lots of profits and you don't want any chances, you don't want any risks. And if poor people or sick people bring risk, you cannot take care of them. And now we cannot go on with that type of a healthcare system.
So for many people, Minister, the worry is, especially those who have medical aids, the fear for them is that they will now lose the ability to receive the health services that they pay for through these private funds that are the medical aids. That is a big fear for a lot of people. So can you put that into perspective? What will this mean for medical aids and those people who have it?
Let's start here, Sakina. How private are medical aids? Because when you say, I've heard this many times, by the way, that this is private money, why the state is meddling with private money. Let's start with exactly how private it is. Sakina, the public service consists of 1.3 million people. All 1.3 million people are subsidized heavily by the state for this medical aid you are talking about. They are getting a subsidy. If a person was to join a medical aid without a subsidy, they will not just afford. Only millionaires will afford. Ordinary people, no matter how much they earn in the state, they won't afford. They are very, very heavily subsidized by the state, including members of parliament, including judges, all of them. Some members of political parties who are criticizing this NHI are carrying heavy medical aids, heavily subsidized by government. By how much do they subsidize them? The 1.3 million public servants, that includes members of parliament and judges. I keep on quoting them, Sakina, and quoting myself because I'm a member of parliament, because we belong to the most expensive medical scheme in the country called PAMED. People believe Discovery is the most expensive. No. PAMED, covering members of parliament and judges, is the most expensive of them all and is heavily subsidized by the state. Now, the state subsidized this 1.3 million public servants to the tune of 71 billion rand per annum. That is a subsidy from the state. On top of that, everybody who is on a medical aid, regardless of who is working for, get what they call tax rebates from SARS. That is money from the fiscus. And those tax rebates are more than 30 billion rand. So out of this 580 billion that is spent in healthcare, already 107 billion or so, comes from the state into subsidies of people who are on medical aid, which subsidies are not received by ordinary people, by ordinary men and women who don't fall within that bracket of earning. And that in itself brings a lot of inequality. So people who are complaining, they are complaining because they have to share with somebody who is poor. And I think the country is based on equality. It is no different, Sakina, from those who own land and who don't want to share with the landless. It's no different. It's exactly the same thing. And we need to tackle some of these inequalities in the country. Now, those people who say they are worried that they'll part with their medical aid, after being subsidized in the manner in which I've mentioned, most of their benefits come to an end around about September. There was a year in which my own benefit ended in September. I think it's 3 years back, 3 or 2 years back. They ended in September, despite of the massive amount of money I'm paying, which the state is also subsidizing me for. But it still came to an end. And when it comes to an end, where do they go for their health care? Some are on chronic medication. They come to the public health care system, where they are expected not to be charged anything untoward. And the public health care system takes care of them. So you have got 14% of the population which are double dipping, using both public and private sector. And you have got 86% of the population that consists of poor people who only use the public sector, which has got meager resources because all the resources are in the private sector. Now, it can't go on like that. We want everybody, rich or poor, to be able to use both systems if it becomes necessary. Because some of the things exist in one system than the other. But rich people or well-to-do people, and here when I'm saying rich people, I'm counting all the public servants, teachers, nurses, the army, police, clerks, everybody who's working for the public service. And I'm also mentioning those people who work for the private sector but are on medical aid. They can use both systems, but other human beings within the same country can use the same systems. That's why in 2014, the Director General of the World Organization, when he was giving his speech opening the World Health Assembly in Geneva, said we cannot, as a world, keep healthcare systems that are a punishment to the poor, where there is gross inequality between the poor and the rich nation, but between poor people and rich people within the borders of the same country. She said we can no longer go on with that healthcare system. We need universal health coverage, which in South Africa we call NHI.
Well, Dr. Motsoaledi, I think very important that we do speak to exactly what's to be expected. I think speaking to the funding, very important for us to understand as a nation. But I do implore that we speak a lot more about some of the challenges that we do see. And we will make time for that, because I think the challenges that people point out are valid. The other day I was looking at a story in the Eastern Cape, I think a few months back at the beginning of the new financial year. They were already deep in debt in terms of the debt that they had to service even before the new financial year started. And this is not unique to the Eastern Cape. Those are some of the issues that we need to talk about. We need to talk about staffing issues and a lot of things that are not going correct in the healthcare system. But that's a story for another day. We thank you in terms of just touching base with the new ministers and their new portfolios. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, newly appointed Minister of Health, speaking to us there about coming back for another term, and also speaking to us about NHI, explaining to us some of the funding mechanisms and how this model actually is going to work.
The Israeli negotiating team is heading to Doha ahead of key high-level mediation aimed at reaching an elusive hostage for ceasefire agreement. Hamas is warning that the talks may be doomed before they begin.
Shin Bet Chief Ronen Bar is heading from border security talks in Egypt to Qatar for renewed working meetings on the hostage for ceasefire deal with senior officials, including CIA Director William Burns. As the talks get set to renew, the family of hostage Daniela Gilboa today released a brief propaganda video of her shot by Hamas that depicts the captive calling for the government to do more to secure her release.
I would just tell you that there has been some back and forth. As you know, we have a team in Cairo right now that includes Brett McGurk and the director of the CIA. They're meeting with their Egyptian, Israeli, and Jordanian counterparts, and there'll be follow-on discussions after that over the next few days.
Barr's talks in Cairo focused on plans to prevent Hamas from smuggling weapons from Egypt after the IDF eventually withdraws from the Philadelphia route it currently holds along the border. The discussions reportedly covered the construction of an underground barrier between the Gaza Strip and Egypt to prevent the smuggling of goods into the Strip. Even before the renewal of hostage for ceasefire talks, Hamas is warning that the mediation efforts could collapse due to actions by Prime Minister Netanyahu and the IDF. Hamas was referring to Netanyahu's list of conditions issued ahead of the talks and the IDF offensive currently underway in Gaza City. The White House said it was heavily invested in an agreement.
Look, we've been working this very, very hard, and there are still some gaps that remain in the two sides and the positions. But we wouldn't have sent a team over there if we didn't think that we had a shot here, and we're going to take every shot we can to see if we can't get this ceasefire deal in place.
And I'm joined now by bereaved mother Sarah Schwartz. Her son Segev Schwartz lost his life while fighting Hamas terrorists after they infiltrated Kibbutz Sufa on October 7th. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us. If you could first just share some memories that you could have with us about.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to talk about my son. He's my youngest son, Segev, who decided that he's going to join the combat unit, the Nahal. His other two brothers, Dvir and Matan, they serve in the intelligence unit. And his sister, Karin, the oldest in the family. Segev was in Sufa base. He wasn't in the kibbutz. Early in the morning, the Nukhba terrorists infiltrated the base, and actually they started shooting. My son ran with all the other soldiers to the migunit, the dining room, the place where it's a safer place. But when he came to the shelter, actually was wounded by a bullet. In the dining room, they fought for at least 7 hours.
7 hours? 7
hours in the dining room, while the terrorists threw grenades into the dining room.
Many terrorists?
Many, around 70, I believe.
So they were vastly outnumbered.
Exactly, and one of the grenades rolled into Segev's legs, and actually his body absorbed the grenade, and that is how he died, and 30 soldiers were saved as a result of that.
Because of his heroism.
Because of his heroism.
So many answers have not been given to the families of the fallen soldiers from what happened on October 7th. When do you think will be the right time to begin an investigation so that we can at least know what went wrong and avoid it happening again?
At the beginning, I thought that it's advisable that we should first fight and put all the efforts in fighting the Hamas terrorists. But now when I see all the demonstrations in Israel, which makes me very sad, because at the beginning, I said, all the time I said, till the victory. And my son Segev had a remarkable personality. His life, all his life, he dedicated to unity. He united students and friends from all over the valley where he lives. And it didn't matter for him whether you are religious or secular, from the kibbutzim, moshavim.
And certainly his unit was made up of people from the entire spectrum.
Exactly.
And he believed in pulling them together, and he saved people from all these different groups. Before we run out of time, though, I just wanted to ask you this. Are you feeling confident that the Army and our government are making the right decisions currently as far as our soldiers are concerned? I mean, obviously, we all care deeply about the soldiers as we move forward. Are we feeling confident that we're continuing on until victory?
I wish I could feel confident. At the moment, I don't feel. I think there is a gap between the chief of staff and the government, and they should bridge this gap for the sake of our soldiers. Because we have to know that this army is a voluntary army. It's not like in Europe and United States. They get a very high quality soldiers with high values, and I think we should think very deeply before doing anything which can risk their lives.
And Sarah, would you say that everyone should serve from across the society? I mean, we're out of time now, but we need
definitely.
more soldiers.
Everyone should serve, because once you live in Israel, you should support Israel, and you should do whatever you can do in order, if you want to live in Israel, if you want to survive.
Sarah, I'm sorry that we ran out of time. We all participate in your loss, and we hope for better days for the people of Israel.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I appreciate that.
Day 277 of the war in Gaza, and IDF tanks are again rolling in the center of Gaza City. The counteroffensive came after intelligence revealed that Hamas command and control centers, including an UNRWA headquarters, had been rebuilt since December, when IDF forces last operated in parts of the city. This was the fifth re-entry by the IDF since it achieved operational control over northern Gaza and central Gaza in January and February, but the first widespread incursion into the Gazan capital in recent months. Accompanied by tanks and airstrikes, the IDF said that troops from the 99th Division operated in Gaza City's UNRWA headquarters, among other locations. The forces have so far eliminated dozens of terrorists and located many weapons in the area. Strategically, the IDF appears to be operating in areas of Gaza City closest to the Netzarim corridor, where the army maintains a semi-permanent presence, allowing Israel to control access to the north for Palestinians seeking to return after fleeing south. It also enables Israel to coordinate deliveries of humanitarian aid directly to northern Gaza. The IDF continues operating in Rafah. Troops from the 162nd Division killed 30 Hamas fighters as they located and destroyed tunnel shafts and weapons. In Khan Yunis in Gaza City, the IDF struck 2 launch pads readied for missile fire into Israel. And in Sejaiya, troops from the 98th Division destroyed terror infrastructure and eliminated dozens of gunmen who operated anti-tank missiles and rocket units from the terror group. An officer was severely wounded in the fighting. And now for a special feature. Economy Minister Nir Barkat and ILTV Editor-in-Chief Mayan Hoffman sat down yesterday for an exclusive and wide-ranging interview. The full interview can be found on our YouTube page. Just scan the QR code on the corner of the screen that will appear during the feature. And now, over to Mayan. Let's give a listen.
Welcome to this special edition of ILTV News. I'm Mayan Hoffman, Editor-in-Chief, and today we're going to be doing an interview with Economy Minister Nir Barkat. Come along and let's hear what he has to say. So, Minister Barkat, thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Thank you.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to speak in Congress later this month. What are the administration's main goals for this address, and how do you respond to the criticism that this might become an overly partisan visit where only Republicans are sitting in the room?
Well, first of all, it's a good opportunity to thank the President of the United States and the U.S. government and the U.S. people for the strong support of Israel and the challenges we have. I think that we must realize that Israel should not be involved in internal American affairs, and the U.S. should not be involved in Israeli internal affairs. It's for the health of the relationship.
But Minister Barkat, are we winning this war? I mean, I know that we've had some tactical wins, and you're talking about 15,000 terrorists down. The original goals of the war were to demolish Hamas, that they should no longer exist. We've sort of pulled back from that goal. The hostages are still not home, that we'll talk about the potential deal on the table. Is this a war that Israel effectively is victorious, going to be victorious in?
Let me put it in a different way. We have no choice. The jihadists of Hamas, and by the way, they're not the only ones in our region, headed the proxies in Hezbollah and other places like the Houthis in Yemen and in Syria. There's many terrorist groups, all funded by Qatar and Iran. Okay, their goal is that October 7th is just the first incident. They claim their charter is to do it again and again and again. So us entering Gaza and eliminating Hamas off the face of the earth is not just because what happened on October 7th. It's to eliminate the next one. The Israeli army has no choice but to enter Gaza, dismantle the terror infrastructure. One more important, very important point. What Hamas did when Israel left Gaza 18 years ago, they significantly funded everything to prepare for the next war. There's huge fingerprints of Iran in Hamas and what they've done, okay? And they're focusing on how to kill Israelis. Iran is not only threatening Israel. Iran is also threatening the Saudis and the Emiratis and peace-seeking moderate Arab states, Sunni moderate Arab states. The goal has to be to create an alliance, NATO equivalent, if you'd like, focusing on the threat of Iran. The countries are threatened by Iran. Strategically, Iran must understand that they're not going to get away with it. They're using their proxy strategies, their nuclear strategy. They want to create a nuclear bomb in order to use it. They've said so. I believe them. And we must collaborate together with our friends around the world to make sure Iran does not get their way.
Why haven't we gotten them home yet then? I mean, 9 months into this war, as you said, terrible conditions. The IDF and the government has come out and said probably at least close to half of them are already dead. Why didn't we go in a week later and get them? Why have we not pushed harder? Why didn't we stop the war to get them back?
We're talking about psychopaths that have come into Israel, created the worst atrocities that we've ever seen since the Holocaust. Raped, killed, took people to... It's totally crazy what they've done. And negotiating with psychopaths that don't give any value to life. They don't treat the hostages like we see them as people, as friends, as family. They see them as, I don't know, elements to negotiate with Israel and get what they want. And so dealing with psychopaths is very challenging in this world. And that's where we must put all the pressure on the psychopaths, not on Israel as a democracy that wants to get our people back.
Hopefully, at some point, we will have them home. We will have this war end in some capacity, hopefully victorious.
We have no choice.
We have no choice, as you said. So what does it look like in Gaza the day after?
The Gazan people, like the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, have to decide, do they want to look like Gaza or Dubai? The people in Gaza have to decide, do they want to continue creating tunnels and preparing for the next jihad, or do they want to collaborate and live side by side to Israel? As long as they don't recognize Israel, any penny given to them, they will build more tunnels to kill us. Therefore, they must not get any capabilities to redo what they've done in the last 18 years. If they recognize the state of Israel and they want to collaborate and have peace with us, we'll find a way to live side by side in a way that eventually could enable them to focus on their economy. But it's not going to happen with Hamas. The Palestinian Authority also has to decide, do they want to peacefully live with Israel, or do they want to, as I say, a two-state for the benefit of eliminating Israel off the map?
Palestinian workers, we haven't been letting them into the country. That's still effectively in place, if I understand correctly. So what's happening with our construction industry, real estate, as a result of this?
I'm a big believer in foreign employees, mainly from peaceful countries. We had a shortage of 70,000 foreign employees before October 7th. And just lately, the government approved bringing 130,000 foreign employees, out of which 60,000 already arrived. We mainly are changing and we shifted the way we work from G to G, from government to government, to B to B, business to business.
Our economy, nonetheless, as you mentioned, is struggling. We have gone through 9 months of this. We've invested a huge amount in running this war, necessary, but nonetheless investments. It was just yesterday, there was a report on we're reducing expenditures to education, to health. I mean, how much longer can we go, and what is going to be the long-term impact on our economy from all of this?
I'm very optimistic as to Israel's economy. I know that throughout the wars, there's always a dip. Naturally, you have reservists go to war, and there's the cost of the war. But after every round of violence in our region, there's a huge spike.
Well, Minister Barkat, thank you so much for answering all these questions
My pleasure.
today.
In medieval times, blood libels ignited pogroms that shattered our people. And now echoes of these lies persist in new blood libels. On college campuses, online, in the media, and halls of power, Jewish communities are facing this haunting echo of history once again. That's why we must speak out and make our voices heard. Today, there is only one organization that truly brings together Jewish communities from more than 100 countries and effectively elevates the voices of young leaders standing on the front lines in this battle for our survival, the World Jewish Congress.
With news constantly bustling in Israel, staying informed can be challenging. So here is President and CEO of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, Yael Eckstein, to give us the 3 highlights of this week's news stories. Take a look.
Shalom, my friends, from here in the Holy Land. I'm Yael Eckstein, and here are 3 things that you should know about Israel this week. Number 1, the Israeli army has been working hard to secure the Philadelphia corridor. It is on the border directly between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. Many people call this the Hamas terrorist oxygen because it consists of many tunnels leading from the Gaza Strip into Egypt. And it's through those tunnels that Hamas terrorists are able to smuggle weapons. Securing this corridor is considered the 3rd phase of the war. Once Hamas can no longer get their hands on the weapons that they use to try to destroy Israel, then we can start to talk peace. Number 2, with some positive updates. On the week of June 24th, the Nova community held an incredible concert in Israel, where there were some of the top artists who came to join with the Nova community to dance. It was incredible to see how the people of Israel came out together to support these survivors of the worst terror attack in the history of Israel. And number 3, on some fellowship news, we received huge news this week where Israel's Ministry of Welfare signed an agreement with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews and Israel Lottery Association, the first agreement of its kind in the history of Israel, where all 3 parties will work together on providing for the basic needs of Israel's poorest citizens. We're talking about the elderly who can't afford a refrigerator, single moms who don't have a bed for their children, or that they need baby formula in order for their child to survive. This joint partnership will save lives, and the fellowship is so grateful to our donors for making this possible. Well, there you have it, friends. 3 things that you now know about Israel this week. Join me next week, same place, same time, on 3 more updates from here in the Holy Land. Shalom from here in Israel.
Well, a political crisis is underway in the Netanyahu coalition. Political pundits are saying that the government is in danger of collapse, with key partners issuing threats that could force new elections. The political crisis has been simmering in recent weeks over the ultra-Orthodox draft, the hostage prisoner deal, and a host of larger and smaller issues. The crisis boiled over when National Security Minister Ben Gvir announced his refusal to vote with the government unless he gets a seat on the so-called war cabinet. The government was forced to pull a bill scheduled to be voted on that would increase funding for religious councils. This following threats from Ben Gvir's far-right Otzma Yehudit party that it would not support the bill. The Shas party, led by Aryeh Deri, had been pushing for the bill and walked out of the Knesset in protest. The two have been trading angry accusations. Finance Minister Smotrich, who heads the right-wing religious Zionists, threatened to leave the government if Israel approves the hostage for ceasefire deal being negotiated later this week in Doha. He had this message.
אזרחי ישראל, זאת התמונה שנקבל בעזה אם חס וחלילה נחתום על העסקה המופקרת. העסקה הזאת היא תבוסה והשפלה למדינת ישראל והיא ניצחון של סינואר. היא תגזור למוות את דינם של 90 חטופות וחטופים שאינם חלק מהעסקה ותביא חלילה לאלפי נרצחים שימותו בטבח הבא של סינואר ושל המחבלים הנוספים מתוך המאות שישתחררו. אדוני ראש הממשלה, זה לא הניצחון המוחלט שהבטחת לכל אורך חודשי המלחמה, זה הכישלון המוחלט. לא נהיה חלק מעסקה של כניעה לחמאס.
Opposition leader Yair Lapid offered the prime minister a safety net on the potential hostage deal.
יש עסקת חטופים על השולחן. זה לא נכון שנתניהו צריך לבחור בין עסקת החטופים להמשך הכהונה שלו כראש ממשלה. הבטחתי לו רשת ביטחון ואני אעמוד בהבטחה הזו. זה לא נכון שהוא צריך לבחור בין חיי החטופים לבין הממשלה. שיעשה את העסקה, אם סמוטריץ' ובן גביר יפרשו, הוא יקבל רשת ביטחון. זו לא אמירה קלה, זו לא החלטה קלה. נתניהו הוא ראש ממשלה גרוע, כושל, והוא אשם באסון ה-7 באוקטובר, אבל הדבר הכי חשוב הוא להחזיר את החטופים הביתה.
Well, the Zikim beach, located just 3 kilometers from the Gaza border, is expected to open on August 1st for the first time since the October 7th Hamas massacre. Some of the 3,000 terrorists that invaded Israel on that day entered the country through the water and onto the beach at the site. At least 19 people were killed. In the months following the attack, Israeli authorities have been working to restore the beach, which suffered considerable damage. Renovations include the addition of a large bomb shelter. According to Israeli media, 20 IDF soldiers will be stationed at the beach with an outpost built for their accommodation. The beach will initially be open only during the daytime hours. And from the beach, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight and around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 24 degrees Celsius or 74 degrees Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies are expected alongside warm temperatures reaching highs of 36 degrees Celsius or 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all of your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I am Steve Leibowitz. Be well, and thanks so much for watching.
So listen to this. I'm going to read it for you. I've stopped all trips for superfans. We have athletes and artists who are struggling to raise money to to attend sporting events and exhibitions. How do we justify paying for fans? We shall no longer be paying for these trips and will use that money where it's needed the most. How? Yo. I just want to bring up a couple of stuff. A year ago, when Ronaldo Gous brought this up, regardless of what's happened to him this past month or two, when he brought this up a year ago, everyone crucified him. How dare he says anything about misappropriation of funds? And Mama Joy, she doesn't use funds anything wrong. And now today, and this is not just about her, this is about all super fans. But I've said this from the beginning. My goodness, I was born into a rugby family, into a family that lives and breathes rugby. Okay, my whole life has just been rugby. Everything is rugby, nah. And my whole life I've been following rugby. And growing up, I started enjoying cricket more. But everything has always been rugby. And if you know the Afrikaans culture, rugby is everything. I'm not a super fan. In my heart, I'm a super fan. But I don't, So, and I've always said, how does this work? How do we pay for a fan to go to event after event after event, stay in the top of places, and millions of others does not get an opportunity like this? Listen, if it's a competition, and for the World Cup, we want to bless 5 fans. It's been a great year for the Springboks. We want to take 5 fans for one game over to England, whatever. That makes sense, that's good marketing. But that your job role is a super fan. Guys, I can't agree with this. Say what you want about Gayton, and I've said what I've wanted, but man, the guy strikes, and he strikes hard. Yeah, on the coldest day of the year, he doesn't wait for it to be sunny and nice. He waits for the coldest morning in South Africa, and he's... Yeah! Gayton, jy strike hard, jong. Yes, my goodness. Boude brand vanoggend met hierdie warm pap. Talk to me, South Africa. What do you think about this?
Let's get more reaction now to this decision. And joining us is Action SA's Ethel Trollip. He is among the 6 names that were announced today as serving on that Judicial Service Commission. Mr. Trollip, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. Can we start with Action SA's attitude, or should we say position, on Dr. Hlophe, who now has secured a seat on the Judicial Service Commission?
Thanks very much, Coley. My colleague Lerato Mkubeni spoke and made a declaration on behalf of Action SA earlier in the day, and she implored upon Parliament to do the right thing, because representatives on the Judicial Service Commission, though they might be nominated by their nominating parties or groups of parties, don't serve the interest of their political party in that commission. They serve the interest of Parliament, and therefore serve the interest of the people of South Africa. And their responsibility is to find the very best jurists to occupy the judiciary and to uphold the Constitution and do the right thing. So our position was that you cannot appoint somebody unless they are beyond reproach. And if they are not beyond reproach, then they're not suitable for appointment.
There are these very strong views for and against, and we've been listening to them now for some time. The understanding here, Ethel Trollip, is that neither Parliament nor does the Constitution have a clear-cut position on candidates such as the situation that faces Dr. John Hlophe. Do you agree with that justification, that because there is no law, the rules of Parliament are silent on this, nor does the Constitution say what happens in a situation like the one that Mr. Hlophe finds himself in? Therefore, there isn't really a reason to object. In fact, in a way, paraphrasing what the ANC's justification is here, among other parties, of course.
Totally, I most certainly do not agree with that. And let me just tell you why. Firstly, ethics is about doing the right thing, whether there's a law that prescribes that or not. That's the first thing. The second issue is that there is a legal lacuna here in Parliament about whether somebody who qualifies to be a member of Parliament can then be excluded or disqualified from serving on a committee of Parliament. Now, that is a lacuna that we in the Rules Committee have asked the parliamentary advisors, the legal team of Parliament, to come up with a position on that, because it's not only Judge Hlophe who has been impeached and who serves in Parliament. The former public protector, Ms. Mkhwebane, also serves in Parliament in the benches of the EFF, and she too was impeached. So it's not unique, and it's also not unique internationally. We see in America, one of their presidential candidates was impeached no less than twice during his term of office, and he's standing to be elected as the president of the United States again, Donald Trump. So this is a legal lacuna that we're going to have to deal with. And what I find really interesting about the Parliamentary Ethics Committee is that it states very clearly in their work that whatever you do before your election is not considered by the Ethics Committee once you're elected. So here's the thing, Dolly, if you were impeached because of ethical impropriety before you became elected as a member of Parliament, the Parliamentary Ethics Committee can do nothing about that. And if your impeachment is not precluded by the Constitution or the rules of Parliament and you become a member of Parliament, then there's nothing that prevents you serving on a committee of Parliament. But as I said at the outset, ethics is about doing the right thing all the time, whether there's legislation that prescribes what is wrong and right.
The Democratic Alliance arguing very strongly that this decision will have the effect of paralyzing the JSC from conducting its work. If you agree with that assessment of the DA, in what form would the likely paralysis manifest?
Well, look, I'm not here to represent the position of the Democratic Alliance. They'd be best suited to do that themselves. They've already put out a social media statement saying that only they objected to the appointment of Judge Hlophe. It's patently untrue. But what might happen, and it was posited today in the declarations, was that some candidates in the Judicial Service Commission who might be presenting themselves to be appointed to the judiciary might take exception to Mr. Hlophe being on the panel doing the assessments. Now, I can't speculate on what might or might not happen, but if it does, it certainly will end up being a problem, and it might slow down or prevent the Judicial Service Commission from doing their work properly. That is why we as Action SA said and appealed to Parliament to do the right thing and appoint only people that are beyond reproach. And it is quite clear in this matter that Mr. Hlophe is not beyond reproach. He was impeached by this Parliament, and there were previous issues that held him away from his position of work for many years. And, there were issues of impropriety other than trying to influence judges in the Jacob Zuma case. So Mr. Hlophe has got a checkered career, and his ethical values or compass is certainly under the spotlight. And we don't believe that he is beyond reproach. Therefore, we do not believe that he should be serving on this committee. But here's the issue. The Commission is represented by a representative from various political parties, the ANC, the DA, Mkhonto Wesizwe Party, the EFF, and then all the other parties that are in opposition. Now, I was nominated from the group of all the other parties, and I'm very happy to have accepted that nomination, and I'm happy to serve in this Judicial Service Commission. Mr. Hlophe was nominated by his party, and his party has the right to nominate him. Whether he's suitable or not is a matter of debate, but he was nominated by his party. They have the right to nominate one person onto that committee by virtue of their proportional strength.
And as you put it, Mr. Trollip, that Mr. Hlophe was impeached by the very same Parliament, and that decision came after he was found guilty of gross misconduct by the Judicial Service Commission, in which he will now serve in. Who's to say? It's a hypothetical question, and perhaps it's one that he is better suited to respond to, but who's to say that he may not have an axe to grind?
Look, yeah, that is hypothetical, as you say, and I'm not probably the right person to answer that. But, you know, I've heard some of the statements by Mr. Hlophe on his swearing in Parliament, where you swear to uphold the Constitution of this country. And he was saying that the Constitution needs to be changed. It needs to be Africanized. And we have a very well-known Constitution that is revered and respected around the globe. And we're very concerned about people who want to tinker and tamper with that and change it to suit their own agendas. But, you know, Mr. Hlophe, many of the proponents for him today spoke about his legal qualifications. Legal qualifications are not the criteria to serve on the judicial service. Well, that might be one of the criteria. I'm not legally trained. So therefore, it cannot be a criteria, an exclusive criteria. And there's no doubt that he's very well qualified. And some of the people who are promoting him spoke at length about his legal qualifications. That's not the issue. The issue is to serve on a committee, to represent Parliament and the people of South Africa, to find the best jurists to serve on the bench in South Africa, to make sure that our Constitution is protected and that all the provisions of the Constitution are allowed to unfold in the interest of every citizen of South Africa. That's the responsibility of the Judicial Service Commission, not to represent a political party or to grind an axe or to go and serve personal interests there.
Ethel Trollip, thank you very much for your time. Now we can refer to you as a commissioner on this very Judicial Service Commission we are talking about. He is among the 6 from Parliament who will be serving on that commission. And I must say this, it is an invitation to Dr. Hlophe. If he does feel that his reputation is somehow impugned as a result of this conversation, this is an open platform to you, sir. You are welcome to pick up the phone and join us. We'd love to have you on this show.
The former president, Donald Trump, was on with Sean last night, and Sean asked a bunch of great questions, but here is something particularly germane to what we're talking about, and that is, does former President Trump care if Joe Biden is not the guy who's the nominee? Watch.
It looks to me like he may very well stay in. He's got an ego, and he doesn't want to quit. He doesn't want to do that. It just looks to me like that's what he wants. I think Jill would like to see him stay. She's having a good time. We prepared for him, but I don't think it's going to matter. We had a great 4 years. Our border was the strongest ever. Our economy pre-COVID was incredible, the best ever. Took out the worst terrorists in the world and defeated ISIS. That was a big thing. I was told it would take 5 years, and it took us a couple of months. We're heading into World War III, in my opinion, with this man semi-running things, because he's not running things.
What do you make of all the talk that if Biden steps aside or is pushed out, that it would be Vice President Harris?
I think that it will be her. I think they are very concerned about the vote if it's not her. They are very, very, they're gun shy. They don't want to do it any other way. I've actually come to believe that's what they're going to do. I think she's an ineffective person.
So, Ainsley, while you were on vacation, I think Steve and I decided we were going to do a bet.
I heard about this yesterday.
If he was going to stay in or not, and I still have the same view as the former president does as well. And it's clear why the former president, he's the easiest person to beat as well. But it doesn't look like Joe Biden is going anywhere. I mean, last week we were talking about the 25 House Democrats that were supposed to go on record and say, hey, we want him out. There's only 6 or 8 of them now that are willing to go. We hear about meetings in the Senate that they're supposed to have this big conference call and that they're going to rally together, get them out. Meetings are canceled. The Democratic Party has a hold on how they do things, and it's run from the top. And if Joe doesn't want to go, he's not going to go. And I think the concerning thing for Americans now is that Jill Biden, it looks like she's assisting him with this plan. Hunter Biden is now in meetings. Why in the hell is he there? A convicted felon. How do you go on the debate stage and look at your opponent and say, you're a felon, and then have your son, who's a felon, in these meetings? That argument is dead now. Here's Jill Biden making the case. She says that he is in it to win it. Watch.
Joe has made it clear that he's all in.
Yeah, she said, he supported my career, so I'm going to support him. If he's all in, I'm all in. And she's on the campaign trail. She's very ambitious. Yesterday alone, she was in North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And Kevin McCarthy was interviewed about what is he seeing? What is he seeing behind the scenes? And he said she's actually the one who calls the shots. Listen.
Jill out there, she's a hard campaigner. I will tell you, it's much different of why I know that they're going to stay in this race. Jill doesn't want to leave either. Many times when we had meetings in the Oval Office, Jill was there as well. Many times, I don't think she's there for policy. I think she's there to give him comfort and direct the meetings.
It was very telling at that in that soundbite we just played with her. She said, Joe's all in, and so am I, because there are many who feel that because the president appears infirmed or needs stage direction, she's essentially the stage manager.
Maybe it's more like
America.
I'm all in and therefore he's in.
Well, no, she says I'm all in. Here's the thing. They are fighting for their lives, but rather than him being out because he can't, she's out. That's why she's barnstorming. That's why she was in 3 states yesterday. Because they have made it clear they are not going to leave the White House without a fight. And Joe has warned people close to him, according to Axios, he's staying in. But that is not a sure thing, because he knows that if the Democratic leaders, or the elites, as he referred to them yesterday, if they say, Joe, we can't raise money anymore, Hollywood says you got to go, the pundits say you got to go, all these Democrats in unsafe for Democrat congressional districts say you got to go, he's got to go. But Donald Trump was hit the nail on the head. It's about ego. And it's not just Joe Biden's ego. It's Jill Biden's.
But can we just talk about that? Because, you know, we were told in the past administration about norms and customs. Did you hear about Melania in the Oval Office with meetings? Did you hear about Michelle Obama in the Oval Office with? Did you hear about Laura Bush? I mean, maybe we heard about Hillary Clinton. Absolutely not. Maybe she would have discovered some things if she was in the Oval Office. There has never been a time where the First Lady is directing things within inside of the Oval Office, and it's just sad. And Fox and Friends First had a guest on that was talking about this. At what point does it become elder abuse? It's clear he doesn't know certain things are happening.
Something that I noticed when she was walking from the coffee shop to the car, when she was out on the campaign trail yesterday, a reporter, a female reporter, we couldn't see her face, was yelling, saying, what do you think about these House Democrats calling for your husband to drop out? And she didn't answer, and she's walking to the car, and then she finally turns to the reporters, who scream questions at them all the time.
All the time.
I've never seen this reaction from her. She says, why are you screaming at me? You know me. Don't scream at me. Let me talk. But then she didn't talk.
Right.
Here she is telling the reporters this. But it's very telling to me. She didn't answer the question, but it's very telling. She normally doesn't stop and talk to the reporters, but to me, it seemed like she is so tired of everyone asking her and putting pressure on her that in that moment, she turned to them and she just snapped in a way.
Well, listen, I think ultimately, for the Bidens, it is an existential threat to their survival, because I think Joe thinks, as well as he can, that if he's not president, he can't protect his family.
Exactly.
And he knows.
You're talking about Hunter?
Well, you know what? He knows, and we've heard this from the Hunter team, that they feel like Republicans, if they could, would go after Hunter. Mm-hmm. And that's why he wanted that immunity deal.
They probably worry. He's done politics his entire life.
I think Joe worries about his whole family and the peril they could be in if Donald Trump and Republicans return to power in the administration. And so it's like, I'm not going to listen to anybody, because I'm doing this not for America, but for my family.
Well, he's already said that it's not about winning. He just wanted to do the best that he can. I mean, I've never heard a political candidate say, I just want to do the best. This is stuff we tell our children. Just do your best. Not for the presidency, though.